Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and we also have joining us former Nerdarchist Ryan.
Formerly known as Nerdarchist Ryan, but doing stuff over at the Dream Syndicate Art Dolls. You can find me over on YouTube, or there's probably a website link down in the doobly doo
Yeah,
thereabouts.
we use in the pinned comments nowadays.
Yeah.
It seems easier for people to find out what you're doing. So, how are you doing in lockdown on this gray day here in the tri-state area?
Yeah, man. I really have to say it feels like we are in a piece of sci-fi writing right now. Like the idea that like everybody's got Schrodinger's virus. It's like where they discover in the zombie movies where like, oh, everybody's actually got the zombie like
Everyone's
once
been bitten.
one well it's there's the storyline like everybody's got the virus. Once they die, they turn into the zombie, or like some other piece of weird sci-fi writing. But yeah, everything feels like we're in the shittiest sci-fi story.
Well,
um,
later today we're playing Maximum Apocalypse, and like the concept for that RPG, it's actually a board game. I have not played the board game, but we're going to be playing the RPG, and the concept is like everyone has their own. There's all these different apocalypses you can choose from, and I think what we're doing today is we're each going to play a character that's had their own apocalypse.
nice. Yeah, I mean, so you're going for maximum apocalypse. This is minimum apocalypse that we're in
Yeah.
right now. It's just yeah, it's not fun. And like one of the issues that's gonna come up pretty soon is like, so I use fabric to make my characters, and getting good and wide selections of fabric when all the fabric stores are probably non-essential businesses shut down. Like I'm gonna have to look more into it. Like early on to the things where before everything was getting shut down, there was a place that was basically the regular place that I go to is like, yeah, at this point you kind of have to describe what you're looking for. We'll bring some options out curbside, and you pick something. You can pick something from there, and you go like that. But that was like before everything was being shut down. It was like early phases of it all.
Have you considered some fabric heists?
Some fabric heist. Yeah, I mean, essentially, what's going to come down the line. I do have, anybody that does fabric work ends up with a stash of fabric. Like it's just a given, and so I'm just essentially going to have to go through my stash and get real creative. And like, the fabric is going to have to inform what I make, and not the other way around. Like usually, I design a character, do sketches and color studies, and figure out what I'm doing. And at a certain point, I'm going to have to say like, okay, this is what I have. So let's see what I can make.
Don't worry about it. The character is already in there. You just have to get rid of the excess.
Yeah, you just sculpt it away. Yeah,
Yeah.
carve it away. Yeah, exactly.
So Ryan used to be a nerd with us, and you can see him in a ton of videos from the older part of the catalog. But some people might be a little bit newer to the channel, so they may have no idea who you are, and maybe you haven't looked at some of the old stuff. Do you want to kind of go into that a little bit and tell people, about what you're doing now?
Sure. So, we started this whole crazy thing in like basically the spring of 2014. And I did things, I think, probably until the spring of 2017. So, not a whole ways that long ago. And before that, I'd been messing around with dimensional illustrations. So if you go to like my website, or you can check out what I'm making on my YouTube channel, I make these posable art dolls or sculptures. Some people, they're kind of suitable for stop motion animation because they're posable wire armatures. And so, in the stop motion world, they would refer to them as puppets. But the puppet people would not refer to them as puppets, because puppets is like live animation, like you're doing it in real time. So it's a very, very dicey world with specific definitions. But yeah, so I've done a few pieces that are just kind of, like I did a Captain Ahab, I did a St. George and a Dragon, like as far as within the last couple of years, recent work. But I've really started to explore this world of the Dream Syndicate, which is this world where the idea is the conceit is that, like, dreams function as currency, and kind of if you control enough of this like energy, it's like you're a wizard, but there's only like a handful of people that like accumulate enough of this energy to kind of get this reality warping capacity. So I've been kind of building out just different parts of the world and like making characters and art in that.
Okay, so so you have a through line on the story. Like I know you've
Yeah.
already made some, some figures for this world. I've seen you posting them. I've seen them online. So that's like kind of like the premise. But is there more to it? Like, do you have like factions or, what's the conflict to keep it going?
Right. So I mean, a lot of it is basically like all of these. So these like wizard oligarchs are called the Manifest, and like essentially even the ones that come across as being good or whatever public facing are all bastards. So the conceit is like it's the people that generally like are hoarding the resources and the power are all evil. So you could draw whatever parallels to a real world that you would like. So like there's this massive underclass referred to as slummers. It's kind of play on the word slumber, but yeah. So like they have kind of just enough of this dream energy to exist because once you don't have it anymore, you start to fade away and perish. You spend a little bit of time as this ghost-like apparition, but eventually you just dissipate and are kind of gone from the world. So the conflict is kind of like people trying to stave off getting dream drained so that they can exist and thrive in the world. And but like I have to work on building out like just more cities and stuff because the main thing I'm thinking about is like there's one major metropolis city that's kind of feels like an industrialized like London town sort of thing, but massive and sprawling. And it's like I'm definitely heavily inspired with this from like Planescape, so maybe I can borrow some of their factional language there a little bit.
Okay, and so you just mentioned the, a London like city. So is this kind of like Gaslight inspired as well, or?
So it's like I think it's going to be more like there might be some like like machinery and stuff, but I think it's going to be more like people like turning gears and stuff like that. So like maybe a little bit of gear work stuff going on, but so like the tech is going to be kind of like shitty, I think in a lot of ways.
So now I'm picturing your slummers, at a crank,
Oh yeah, yeah.
turn into
Like
gears.
when they like go to a job, it's just hours on end of like turning cranks, pushing the like wheel carts and wheelbarrows and stuff like that. Everybody being kind of like dingy and dirty, and just like waking up the next day to do it again. So I also want to look into like RPGs that deal in like surreal stuff like the Monty Cooks, the Invisible Sun, and things like that.
The
As far as
strange, that
more,
kind of stuff.
yeah, anything that's dealing in like reality warping or surreal elements.
Both the strange and an invisible sun have those elements in there, where in the strange, like you can manifest yourself in other places, but you're like recoded to what that place would be. So however you are in the real world is how you are, but like if you were to go to a medieval fantasy world, like you would recode it as that analog, or if it was like a science fiction, high tech world, you would recode it to a different analog. So that could kind of be fun as an RPG concept to be playing, to have your characters kind of like fade in and out of the game depending on whether they're awake or not.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't know exactly. Like I think that like it's its own self-contained world. Like how you sometimes you have fiction that you like the never-ending story, or like Labyrinth. Like there's like the real human world, and then there's like the fantastical world of of the goblins or the storybook characters in the case of the never-ending story. I don't know. I kind of feel like I want to ignore the idea that the real world even exists, and like this is just the world. Like more like the Dark Crystal, right? Where like you don't really leave Thra, like you're just kind
Okay.
of invested in that. So like I think there might be other like dimensions and pocket dimensions, like maybe like different dreamscapes, but I think it's all like that world is all the known world for like the players or like the person that's like reading stuff about it.
No, absolutely. It's just when you mentioned Bonnie Cook, like
Yeah,
it made
yeah.
me think of those games, and those games actually work that way, where you kind of like fade in and out of them. And it was actually like it's an actually clever device that they use to deal with the real world problem of
Absentee players.
yes.
Yeah, well, and from from what I've come across on Invisible Sun, like it's kind of like surreal The Matrix, where
Yeah.
like your character's Keanu Reeves' character before like he awakened, and then like when you're in their version of The Matrix, it's just more like informed by surrealist art and visuals and stuff like that.
So are you thinking about that in the future as you flesh out your world, doing something with an RPG, whether it's professionally or for fun?
Yeah. At some point when it's a lot more built out, I would like to play around with that and like just given my sort of D&D and role playing game background, like yeah, like it'd be kind of why not come up with like stat blocks. Like as far as I've thought a little bit about systems and like unless I find something else like Fate, like Fate Core seems like it might be a pretty neat way because with dealing with the dungeon master or the game master has some level of like intrusions or something to that effect to spend against the players. So like a character that wields like a villain that wields a lot of the stream energy, like say if they're the manifest, like they probably have a lot of intrusions to spend because they can literally alter reality in a much more impactful way than like a character with like a little bit of that power. So, which is, they would be more of your like hedge wizard sort of characters. But I definitely want to get away from your standard, like D&D feel, because like D&D is a great game for doing what it does, like a core adventuring party and like that sort of like pulp action stuff. But when if you don't want to play that type of game, then you want to play something other than D&D.
Yeah, a cipher system's a pretty decent generic system as well. And also the idea, like if you expend too much energy, you fade away. Well, in cipher system, you know your stats are your resources, so they can like take damage, but they can also you can also spend them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so that's kind of like giving yourself away a bit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you spend like that, like that last bit of it, then like that's when the process of like you starting to dissipate starts to happen.
Uh,
So yeah,
yeah, I could definitely see using that, especially for like a dream mage type system, where you're spending your mind anyway when you do that kind of stuff. So it just kind of like would naturally flow into that.
yeah. Oh, so I brought along some goodies. Um, here, let's see if we can get him in frame. So I don't know how well he's
Right
showing
there
up.
is centered. If you put them in front of your face,
Oh yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
Just block your face.
just like yeah. So like he's got a cool little like his dagger there is just an old spent Exacto blade.
uh, so it's
So
really so you could really stab a bitch.
yeah, you could really stab a bitch. Uh,
Does he have a name?
so this so it's funny like a lot of things in my world. I'm not really going with like established like things having like races or whatever. So like it just things just exist and they look weird or they just look how they look. But that thing is called a darkling, and darklings are these like shadowy creatures, these assassins that are kind of directed by the Dream Syndicate, which there's like they're like a shady cabal, and so um, there's like this overarching figure called the dreaming or no the sleeping emperor, and like he's kind of he has a lot of power, and there's like different factions that are like intruding on his dreams to kind of
Yeah.
manipulate what happens. So like between him and the Dream Syndicate, like they have control over Darklings, and sometimes the Dream Syndicate wields more influence over the sleeping Emperor's like dreams, and so things get really shitty and nightmarish. The more power they exert over things.
So we know what he is. We know what his job is.
Mm-hmm.
But you could like create a story for the individual sculpts that you make the individual characters. Like does that particular Darkling have a name?
So I think Darklings are actually, the thing about them is they're like absence of a personality. Like they are kind of like a uniform entity that acts, like basically if there's a group of them, they act in like perfect concert in like almost like a hive mind or whatever. Like they don't really have individualized personalities because they are just like tools or shadows of of past existence type of thing. So yeah, like they might be sort of people that have faded away in the world. Like they might become darklings. Might be what happens.
Oh,
I'm not 100% on that yet, but that's one way I'm thinking about keeping it.
that could be fun. Like the slummers that fade away or whatever, become a Darkling. It might be fun to tell a story where you have a slumber that fades away, becomes a Darkling, and then discovers self at some point and breaks away from the collective. I mean that story's been told a bunch of times, but it's always fun.
Yeah, I mean they're like it's the same thing like with there was the one Star Trek where you had a Borg that kind of, got broken out of it too. So like, yeah, it's not off the table. But like, so I'm imagining those guys more of like these sort of like wispy shadows, and like with Clay, I can't necessarily 100% do that, but like he had like these head tendrils. I imagine that they just kind of like weave, lazily. Uh, so yeah.
So, do you have any more critters to pull out?
Yeah, let me pull out some stuff here. So let's see. So this guy is just a pet of the next one I'll bring out. But yeah, so this guy here. So he's got, like peacock feathers along his back. And so on my channel, like I have a process video of how I made this guy. He's most of my stuff is usually wire armature and posable. This guy is, functions more. He's a clay sculpture. So this is a suthril. So they are these sort of insect bug thing. Like between bugs and lizards, they kind of make these trill sounds, and they have like a mild narcotic effect on people in the world. So like the well-to-do the well-to-do tend to have them, as sort of like these pets that like also help them relax. But the way the suthrils function is they use it to incapacitate smaller prey and eat them. But on most humans, like it just kind of gives them a buzz. So here is Manifest Lolora. So she is one of the Manifest characters. So she has this, really fancy dress. And so yeah, so again, she's like one of those characters that like a lot of people talk about her like she's a saint, but she's actually kind of an awful person. When in terms of like effects on the world and things like that. So there's that, and then so I will show you a bit of a progression here. So I'm started messing around with making these little creatures because with the clay shortage issue coming up eventually, let me see if I can get that in frame. I have to do something, so I made this little guy. Let's see, how visible is he? There we go. So yeah, I made this little guy who's kind of like a three-eyed slug creature, and then I started messing around with casting him. So there's mold, good stuff there, and then we have a pretty good reproduction. So I'm trying to leave the eyes blank, so this way, like, I can kind of go in there and put whatever I want inside of it. You know, paint them up and do like just different additions, different sort of colorways of them. But so the idea is like making these sort of uh, flora and fauna, like fauna creatures that are just like, you know, squirrels or whatever that kind of exist in the world. But you know, instead of having squirrels and chipmunks and stuff, they're just going to be these weird like slug-like creatures, multiple eyes, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I really dig these slugs and the pet that's been dubbed the fairy gecko salamander in the chat.
Nice, nice.
So you said that they have this narcotic they kind of use. Is that through the trilling? Is it through the display of the peacock feathers?
I think it's largely the trilling part of it. But yeah, like I could definitely see them being like, you know, a low CR like D&D monster type of thing. Like, yeah, like maybe if you had a bunch of them together, it would like amplify the effect or cause disadvantage to the saving throw or something like that. Like I think it's like, you know, a really low wisdom saving throw DC, like, you know, between 8 and 10. But maybe you have a disadvantage if there's like a gang of 5 of them or more or something together.
Based off the way it looks, I'm just envisioning them kind of doing that trilling thing and then spreading out the feathers behind them and then doing like a dance. And that's how they like incapacitate their prey by confusing them. And you know, in the effect, and then they pounce.
Yeah, and then they just mouth right over.
Then it's that crocodile death spiral roll.
Yeah, I mean, so I imagine them too. Like, you know, I would say they're probably only like between 3 and 4 foot tall.
Yeah.
So like, they're not a threat to like most creatures, you know, like most humanoid creatures that exist in the world. But like, you know, if you're one of these like little 3-eyed slug creatures, you might be in danger. That's the other thing too. I have to figure out like, since I want to be able to do like just different, you know, put different eye colors in the eye sockets and paint them in different colors. Like, I'm trying to think of a good in fiction way of explaining why they look the way they do and how varied those things are. But you know, I'll get around to that when I have the idea for it. You know, or maybe eventually more publicly sharing this stuff, and I can get like crowdsourcing on the ideas.
The you know, the other character when you showed her off, I was like, oh, she looks nice and good. Then I was like, oh, wait a minute, didn't you mention the aristocrat being kind of horrible?
Yeah. It's yeah, like it's I'm drawing certain inspirations and parallels from certain certain things, certain real world things.
So, you know, as you're working on these, you know, prior to the fact that now you might not have as much selection as you wanted, were you kind of going with the idea that you're telling a story as you develop each character, or you're just like, here's a character design idea, I'm gonna make that?
It can go either way on that. Like sometimes I have a snippet of writing, or sometimes I have a sketch first and I do a bit of writing about it or whatever. Like I have a few short stories that are like in process right now, and then, you know, every piece of art I want it at the very minimum to have like a bit of like Magic the Gathering level like flavor text. You know how there's that like short like 1 or 2 sentences at the bottom of your Magic cards that like, oh, I this gets me curious, what is the life of this thing. Like every piece of art has to at least have something like that going on for it.
So for examples, like how long does it take you to create one of these, you know, kind of start to finish, like the little pet guy or the darkling?
So the pet guy, like that was like I had a scrap of clay. So I started messing around with this stuff called epoxy sculpt, which so Sculpey you have to bake it in the oven, and you know, like there's certain like you can't put certain things in the clay, like if it's like a low temperature plastic, or if you have very delicate details like how it sits in the oven, like there's a certain level of danger of something getting messed up. But epoxy sculpt, that stuff over a course, you have like hours to work with it, and it gets progressively harder as you work. And then in like 24 hours, it's like rock solid. Like it's dense. Like this little sculpture, like for its size, like it's surprisingly heavy. The plastic castings are like probably at least half the weight of that thing.
Could you use it for a sling bullet?
You could use it for a sling bullet. So all that being said, like so like that little critter, like he was made in a matter of minutes. Like I found the form that I liked and it came out. Like I want to do more like that one kind of was in the moment, but I want to do more sketching and have more of a plan for when I have excess material. So actually making the sculptures, like, you know, I can get, if I have all my materials together and it's all planned out, I can get the building part done in like probably 2-3 days if it's not complex. But there's also lots of like sketching and like, you know, going into Photoshop, like scanning in the sketches, playing with color studies, and like figuring out what I'm doing before I'm doing it. So like that, you know, that could add like another, days, if not a week, like when I'm doing like whole composition, things like that. Like I'm not only planning what the characters looking like, but the illustration that they're in, like that takes some time.
Do you have any examples of those around? Because people probably, not probably, people might not know what you mean by that.
Of the finished art. So yeah, unless we get into a screen sharing situation,
Yeah.
uh,
So, but they can find it on your one.
so Instagram, if they go to Instagram, so dream_synd, so SYND.
Oh, we have that linked too. So
Yeah, so if you lurk either my YouTube, which will take you to Instagram, my website, which also has a link out to my Instagram, or Instagram itself, like you can see some examples of, you know, of what that all ends up being. But like, yeah, so there's prop pieces that get built. Like I have this giant, this sculpture that's like, you know, about 3 foot tall, and it's just like a stack of like 4 heads. And so like, you know, so there's like some physical things that end up coming into existence too.
okay,
So,
to bring
yeah,
it all
like
together.
I'm building like individual like assets of a world. So yeah, it's all coming together, bit by bit.
Well, Capitan Broar, make the slug crawl into the ear of a victim and make it grow a third eye or something.
I mean, yeah, maybe they like merge with something, or like there's some sort of like ambient energy manifestation or something. But I mean, third eye slugs, not a bad idea.
Yeah, people could go around collect them for the different properties. Maybe they have their own dream essence if you get them to bond with you.
Or you can boil them down. Yeah.
Well, you could go that way as well.
Yeah, like another thing with the world, like I'm imagining, like essentially there's a black market you can go to and like trade away some of your dream essence, and so like, you know, the people that are like really on Skid Row, like some of them end up, trading away their last dream to like, you know, like keep shelter over their families' heads, kind of thing. Yeah, so like food and shelter kind of concerns.
So, is there any side effects to wielding the dream essence of other beings?
I haven't come up with anything, although like wielding too much of it, like there's the idea of too much of it wielded at once can cause an event called an unraveling. And so that's basically like reality like warps and distends and like is so disrupted that it basically wipes out everything for a certain number of mile radius. So then like a monument of the manifest that was wielding on that power gets put in that place, and like all the people that were killed as a result of that are kind of, you know, just plowed under and forgotten. And then there's the idea, there's a prophecy in the world called the Great Unraveling, where like at a certain point, you know, too much of that energy is used, and the world is pretty much, some sort of apocalypse is foretold, based off of the amount of the energies being wielded, but nobody exactly knows. And then like within the world, there's these plots to like, there's some cabals that want to assassinate the sleeping emperor. There's some that want to just wield and manipulate him, but like some people think if you kill him, well, that'll destroy the world. Like so, there's all these sorts of like things that I'm still figuring out for myself.
So you have dream nukes and the ultimate dream nuke.
Yeah, the mega dream nuke.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how long have you been working on this world? Because actually, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, and we're related.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, so I've had the first sort of like early thoughts about it years ago, and like, so like before I moved to Albuquerque, like like maybe a year or two before. So we're talking 2011, 2012. I had this gallery show where I had, like I wanted to make a bunch of new pieces for the exhibit. So like I did like 3 or 4 pieces over the course of 2 months, and I started making these strange creatures and this like these weird backdrops. And that was like the first inkling of like, there's something here that I like and want to come back to. Like the work in of itself, like the pieces, I didn't even think, looking back, like I don't think they were that great, but there's something about the designs and just like getting weirder with it that I kind of want to keep developing, keep going back to.
We're going back to the slugs and mushrooms and snails days, aren't we?
Well, I mean, like the mushroom sprites, like I don't really think they quite fit into this world. Like maybe if they're a little stranger, like those were kind of they're neat, but they feel more like some sort of fae that like comes into like the world that we live in, like planet Earth, like exists somewhere tangential to that, and like I'm trying to go like completely somewhere else with it.
Even weirder.
Yeah. You get real weird with it.
Yeah. That's what I mean. This is kind of like the evolution, the next step
it.
from that. Because like it's like even with your little slug creatures, like I kind of see that in there, and that's what it instantly made me kind of think of.
Yeah, like maybe if I warp the because like I had the things that look a lot more like our regular world slugs that made those creatures before, which are like well received, but they look pretty close to like real world slugs, just like with like maybe more fanciful painting. But like slugs can look really cool and interesting too.
An alien.
Yeah, an alien, like oh man, like the ones that are like red and black look so cool, and like these ones that are.
If you start getting into like the different sea slugs, they start getting pretty weird.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I'm all about like looking at like moths and butterflies and like weird alien like slugs and insects. Like like maybe at some point I'll do something that's inspired by like a tardigrade because those look really strange.
Well, I'm ready to test it out when you come up with the idea for the RPG aspect of it.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot more of the world needs to exist other than like bits of writing and like a few, like I have a few factional notes, but nothing that feels enough like world built to like really, play an RPG as of yet.
It needs some like fleshing out for sure.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm probably like a year or two out from having things together to that extent.
That's an optimistic view.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, like it's not like I'm gonna write a full-fledged RPG.
No, I was talking about the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. Somebody brought up the zombie apocalypse. Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah, me just now.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be Skyped in to whatever it is.
This too shall pass.
Yeah. I'm sure at some point, we'll have universal testing, some sort of vaccine, something will give because like there's lots of money on the line for people to figure this out. Like,
So there's definitely some questions. Most of them pertain to D&D. Doug wanted to know if there's a 80s Los Angeles rock influence in any of your work.
Not really, because like what I listen to the most is like shoot anymore I'm so bad with music, but like for me it's a lot of like Tom Waits if I'm listening to music, and like what else? What is that? At the drive-in, what did they become? So yeah. I'm trying the Mars Volta, like the Mars Volta and Tom Waits. But anymore, like I listen to too much podcasts and too much real world stuff. So actually, if anyone wants to come back and put in their favorite like sheer escapist, like just it's just fiction or fun
Yeah, you might need some of
recommendations.
that.
Yeah, if you want to put those down in the comments, come back or in the chat, but or particularly come back to the video and put it in the comments. That'll be super helpful because I need some more escapist shit to listen to these days. Just sheer, yeah, like just stuff that's not about anything. They're just telling a good story.
So
But yeah, oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, at Connor asked about what do you think of a Dragonborn wizard, and well, in my game we played that game for 3-4 years maybe. For a while, you played a Dragonborn.
I was a sorcerer, but yeah. So, yeah, dealing with chaotic energies being channeled through me.
Yeah, well, I mean, chaos mage, sorcerer, Falcor.
Falcor. Yeah, again, going back to the never-ending story.
There's
But
underlying theme there.
yeah, well, so yeah, like a lot of like a lot of stuff that I really want to draw upon for all this is like like 80s kids movies, like The Never-Ending Story, Time Bandits, so all the stuff that has kind of like surrealist undertones to it too. All the Jim Henson fantasy stuff, the stuff he did with Brian Froud, like definitely a huge influence. And then Planescape is like they're all like my primary inspiration points. And then I'm kind of looking to see what other things I can kind of mishmash into it.
You know what? I'm pretty sure you're on the video where we did the Lizard Wizard, and that's probably a Dragonborn wizard. So
yeah, I think so. Way back.
That definitely, I believe that's a thing that we did. If you do the channel search, you could probably find the video where we make just that. Indeed. Now, this doesn't exactly go along what you were saying for influences, but it is in the same time period. Me and Steph went and watched The Last Unicorn. And I don't know why I was thinking about it. I mean, we'd watched it when we were kids, and B.J. Hensley, I know she did an RPG for it. And
was that the Tom Cruise, Tim Curry one, or is that a different one?
You're thinking of Legend.
Legend is fucking awesome.
It was good.
yeah, but a different one. Was it animated?
Oh, yeah, Rasputin actually. It's a Rasputin. Maybe I'm saying.
Are we going Rankin Bass?
Rankin Bass. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
The same one that did Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah, the greatest adventure.
I do. Yeah. I think they use the same musicians.
Yeah.
And as soon as the art shows up, you're like, it's so distinctive for from that time period, and just in general, like no one else has really done anything like that in that style for whatever reason.
I mean, they were also behind all those holiday special stop motion stuff. Like all the Year Without a Santa Claus and what was the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? I'm trying to just remember the specific titles of them. But like,
forget about it. The Heat Miser and Cold Miser.
Yeah,
that stuff was all gold. But I couldn't get my kids to watch it. They're like, no way. We had duped them into watching Willow the week before, but they weren't having it. They're like, what's it about? And then they start looking it up and they're like, no, hard pass.
I think there was talk of like developing that into a series or something too. Like Disney Plus was like, I don't know if that's going to happen or whatever, but I know that was a thing in the air. Fucking Warwick Davis, man. Like he's like, there's so much cool shit that he was involved in. Like, I mean, people are going to obviously argue in the argument section down below, as Gareth would say. Yeah. But like, like he was an Ewok. So talking about great things, like people would argue whether or not that was great. But Warwick Davis was an Ewok. Like all the things where there was like a little person there, like Warwick Davis was there. Like Harry Potter, he was like one of the trolls. Grip Hook.
Yeah, so they begrudgingly watched Willow with us, and
Hmm.
they're like, it was okay, but yeah, and I think really too, like the movie pacing from those was a little bit different as well than it is today. Today
What?
everything's so much faster.
I mean, you watch anything that was made in like, going back to the 60s to 80s or whatever, and like, yeah, the pacing is so much more slowed down. Like, I mean, forget about it. When you go back into like the black and white era of
Yeah.
film, like you're talking about like over 2 hour movies or close to 2 hour movies where like the pacing's so slow that it feels like 4 hours just because like
But
they had a different way that the story and
it was an
narrative
event,
unfolded.
right? When you watched a TV show or a movie, it was this big event, and it was kind of a big deal. Where now it's like everything you have everything on demand,
Yeah.
so you can watch it whenever you want. And back then, it wasn't that way. Like it was coming on at this set time. You either watched it or you didn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so like the hard thing about like much older like classic entertainment too is like if you go for me when I go back and watch like a black and white movie, there's something about the high contrast of it that like lulls me to sleep. So it's just like looking at the high contrast of the black and white that like at this point like it just knocks me out. I don't know I don't know what it is, but like it's hard to make it through like a Citizen Kane or the spy that came in from the cold or something like that.
Well, I think we're about to have our next like revolution evolution when it comes to entertainment because everyone's trying to figure out what to do with all these movies they made, but they can't really release them and capitalize on them.
Well, I mean, like right now we're running the great experiment of like the direct to basically cutting out movie theaters and figuring out how that works. Like, you know, movie theaters may like largely go by the wayside, and there might be just like a few big regional ones at a certain point when people are like, oh, we can get this movie for way less and just enjoy it in the comfort of our own home and like have our own snacks and beers and make it not $100 plus outing for a family of four, but like it's $20 for the movie, and then like maybe you order takeout or whatever, like so you like cut the cost in half, and then like I don't know what the financial arrangements are between the movie distributors like a Netflix or whatever, but yeah, like we might see something radically different happen.
Yeah, and like right now we're seeing some things that big companies are just releasing. Like we just recently watched Onward on Disney Plus,
Yeah, I
and
mean, but that's through their own like platform and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Whereas like other places were selling it for like $20 as like a prime release if it's not on the platform. So yeah, it's like I don't know. It's an interesting time, and like it's funny. I thought you were gonna go in a different direction because you're talking like way more immediate.
yeah,
Yeah, like even when you think about things like AR and things like that, and like how that might go into effect like movie watching experiences. Like I have a few friends that like are filmmakers, and they're horrified at the idea that like people might like have 3D experiences and they can't control exactly what the viewer is looking at and stuff like that. But like in like 20 years that may be the movie going experience that like you can move through the movie kind of in a way that you want to and not necessarily the way the director intended. So yeah, like that like they think it's like blasphemy to even talk about things like that.
the arts are killing the art. Well, time will tell, but everything is moves so fast. Before you know, unless maybe like in theaters they go in a different direction, and they kind of like do the Disney thing, where they have experiences. When once the technology gets cheap enough, where they can do it and mass produce it.
Well, I mean, there's like so I don't know how much he's still involved with or whatever, but like so there's this thing. I think it's in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I had an acquaintance that like recently got laid off from there. But there's a place called Meow Wolf where like there's stuff online about it that you can go check it out. But they created these immersive, um, like sculptural exhibitions that you go through, and maybe there's some stuff going on with AR as well. But like, so it's these like experiences where, and you could imagine like a medieval fantasy dungeon crawl version of this, but it's these like the sculptural exhibits, but they were, you're also meant to like engage with them and interact with them. So you could imagine things that like are part recreation center, part art exhibit, part like just experience that you go to have. Like, what if it's like kind of part LARPing, part like almost like console gaming, except you're actually doing the action. Place that you go to do things. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that'd be.
I think
like
you just
real
described
badass.
True Dungeon.
Yeah, is that?
Yeah. So True Dungeon is this like D&D themed escape room experience. Except for you move through, depending on which one you do, 4 to 6 rooms, I guess it is. Takes an hour or two to do. And it's a lot of that kind of stuff, puzzle solving, riddles, and, they have combat, but the combat is they have the monster, and then there might be specific conditions that apply to that monster. But the way you engage the monster is through shuffleboard. So there's a shuffleboard, and your weapon attacks. You just shuffleboard, and it'll be a number, and that and then that correlates to something on the monster. And you have tokens that you put into the sliders. They like determine what you're using, your weapons or whatever they are, based on things that you've gained through playing, or things your character just starts out with.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you want to get a situation where you are really handling, even if it's like a blended weapon or a boffer weapon, like you want to get in a situation, and like maybe, like it. So maybe it's like you're wearing goggles, and so your AR seeing the monster, but maybe it's just like they have this like foam thing that like you're attacking and it's moving, so it's like a green screen type of thing, but you're seeing the monster and like fighting and engaging with it, like so a certain point where you can get into. And like if everybody's wielding boffer weapons, then you don't have the dangers of like injuring somebody. You can have multiple people attacking the same thing. Like I think that's like the ultimate of where like things could go. And like just like imagine like you have the sound effects of the monster being piped into your ear. Like that would just.
And then the next step from that is player one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so going back to the film thing too, like. What's his fuck? The guy who played Ash, Bruce Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard rumors that he might be doing like, remember Dragon's Lair? Like Dirk, the main protagonist from that like really slickly animated game, the Don Bluth like animated. Yeah, so I think there's either a movie or a show. I think it's a movie in development. With
it's
Dirk.
It's a Netflix thing. No, oh man, I think it's a different actor though. I saw.
Oh, it's somebody else. Okay. I mean, for some reason I was picturing him. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. I seen a couple of the things, and no, it's definitely a different actor because it was so like it was someone my kids or my wife would be into. So it was
like he's a dreamboat type of situation. Yeah.
Maybe, but or just a more modern, more popular actor. Yeah. I mean, Bruce Campbell's popular, but he's very.
Maybe it's Ryan Reynolds. Maybe it's Ryan Reynolds.
Yes, it was Ryan Reynolds.
Because he's very expressive and cartoonish, sometimes.
That guy's a regular clown. It's got to be him. No, I first of all, I love him, especially as Deadpool. He is just Deadpool somehow.
Yeah. I mean, like it's funny. I didn't even see the version. I guess it was a Weapon X movie or something where like, he fell in love with the character and really got deep into the lore. Well, it was like a shitty interpretation of the character.
But you know what? That actually happened before that movie. It happened in the Blade trilogy, because he played a character in there, and like he's like, well, what do I use for reference? And they handed him a Deadpool comic book.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where his like love affair with Deadpool kind of began.
Yeah, I didn't know that was where he got started. But like somebody who is very he's done a ton of comedic, physical comedy sort of roles. So and then to have like there's the smart assiness of it, and then also the physicality, because he's also like has gotten himself into like peak physical condition to do those roles too. So just
So yeah, so if we get a Dragon's Lair, does that mean then if that's successful, we'll get a Space Ace? I was trying to explain the games to my kids, and I'm like, there's like this amazing, ahead of its time arcade game. Then you have to explain an arcade game to them.
You have to go 6 layers deep
Yeah.
to explain to these kids these days.
Oh no! The best was, this has nothing to do with D&D or nerd stuff, but the best was, my wife was cleaning in the house and she found an unopened CD car converter from a cassette deck. So so my daughter knows what a CD is, but she has no idea what a cassette was. It's like, no.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of nerdy, like old tech. Yeah, it's wild to like live through the different iterations of what things are. But going back to the Don Bluth arcade games, like those games are friggin' terribly designed. Like they were beautiful, but like they weren't. It's not fun gameplay. Like you just had to memorize sequences and execute those sequences in perfect timing to progress through the game. So
I had no idea how it worked. Like all I know is like when I described them, it's like it's this amazing looking game that only one person actually knew how to play it. Everyone else, you just died different ways over and over again.
Yeah, like there were beautifully animated death scenes and all the action was so good, but like the controls sucked for it, and like really like it was like more of an animated movie that you could kind of sort of play through, if nothing else. And at some point I'm sure somebody's uploaded like the entire like sequence of the game.
Yeah.
So like I'm just gonna watch it on YouTube, because playing that game
Was pointless.
There's no fun to be had there. Like if you want a good like Space Ace game that actually has like good gameplay and good design, like go play one of the Earthworm Jim games, because like it's like that aesthetic with its own weirdness.
Or Firefox. Was it Firefox?
Firefox wasn't. No, I mean maybe there's mission versions of it. Star Fox.
That's it.
I haven't played any of the later ones, but I played the initial one, and that you're just like flying a plane around, and like man, the animation in that game really didn't hold up. Like it's like first generation like 3D effects, like it looks pretty vulgar comparison to what's being made now. So
well, that's why I never go back.
Well, yeah, it's funny having the rose-colored glasses of like how you think those things looks, how you remembered it. It's like D&D sessions of like you remember this epic thing, but then like you're just there with miniatures,
Yeah. No, I find anytime I go backwards, I'm just horribly disappointed. So I try not to. Ted told me he tried to go back and watch Gen 1 Transformers, and he's like, it was just so horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to go back and watch Farscape? Yeah, Farscape, because that was like another like Jim Henson Creature Shop production, with like a more sci-fi stuff. Again, it's like more to like just fill like my like sort of visual library of
that's not bad, and it's also not quite as old as going back to like the 80s.
Yeah.
But no, I actually went through all of Farscape, all of Babylon 5. I think next maybe it might be time to dig into Stargate.
Oh yeah, the TV series.
Yeah. So I've just been running through things. Plus, what else are we gonna do?
It's true. I mean, I don't know. Like these days, like still, I'll be working on stuff for like 8, 9, 10 hours, and like, oh, it's late, and I should probably not work anymore. So it's like the days just go by quickly anyway. But they all do kind of blur and bleed into one. So.
It's funny. Like someone was telling me a story about their girlfriend who isn't used to just doing everything from home. It was like for them, it had always been a mix. And, but now they're working from home and they have more stuff to do. And they're kind of like, it's 9 o'clock at night. Should I still be working? I feel like I should still be working because I'm home. So.
Yeah, at some point you just have to like figure out like constrain the hours and just like cut it off. at some point. Oh, I guess another thing I should like before I forget or whatever. Uh, so I had slash still have a day job through the library system here in Philly, and like so right now with things going on, like we're still getting paid, but we kind of have to just come up with a project, a thing to work on. So I long thought of the idea of having a channel where a YouTube channel where I talk about art books and things like that, like kind of more fixated on the visual elements and pick books that are like visually lush to look at. Like they're book YouTube channels, but there are art channels that talk about art books, and maybe book YouTube channels that sometimes talk about art books. But I wanted to create a channel that's specifically for that thing. So I'm blending those two ideas together of like, I need to fill up hours and do something productive that has a social good and that idea. So I have maybe down in the links in the pinned comment is a link to that channel, and like you can't search it out right now because no content has been uploaded to it yet, because I was trying to find it. I was using the exact name and trying to get to it and still couldn't. So it's very exclusive. You need that link down there to get to it.
And once you get there, there's nothing there right now.
There's nothing there. But when you subscribe, so it's going to be like basically fairy tale and like folk tale books and like art books and things like that. So like usually genre stuff, but like sometimes I might flip through like a Brahm book, but also maybe stuff that like deals with like Grimm's fairy tales and things like that. So I have the first couple of the first three videos scripted, and then now I have to do my shot list and then like produce the content. So within the next couple of weeks, the first video should be uploaded to it. So that's some fun times. But I wanted to create like a little bit of a backlog of content and then upload weekly from there.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's gonna be happening. So I got like the first three uploads. So this is an exclusive. There's the Singing Bones, Tony Dirtolizzi's The Spider and the Fly, and the Wolves in the Wall by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean. So
are they going to go up in that order?
I don't know which order I'm going to upload them in just yet. But so all three of those books are kind of dark, kind of spooky. So maybe that's like I'm starting with the books that are in my collection, which I have a good like 50, 70 like art books. So I'll start off with that, and then I'll have to like figure out like with the library system, because I'm sure there's going to be a way that like if I come up with a queue of books that I could get them, and and we'll go from there. So
you're also involved with an art order project for dragons, right?
Yeah, way back when, and that's really why the earliest uploads to my YouTube channel, my art YouTube channel, were St. George and the Dragon themed, because it was a droid book to get into, and it had to be themed around dragons, and so I had the idea of doing a St. George and the Dragon piece, and so I just did my process work and uploaded that to YouTube, and so that book is available through Art Order's website, and actually coming up soon for Mermay, there's another book, an older piece that I'd done. Like I'd done a piece of Hellboy fan art for Abe Sapien, and so I was like, all right, this is an old piece, but I'll submit it and see what happens. And like so that piece got into the book. So when that Kickstarter goes live, I'll be making some noise about it, at least through Twitter and stuff like that. Like I'd even done, so getting back to my art YouTube channel, like I had done a flip through of the Singing Bones and uploads into my channel, but then it's like, there are some like off kilter uploads that weren't exactly what the channel was about. And it feels like with a YouTube channel, at least when you're starting out and building an audience, like you have to be very specific about what you're showing people. And so like, that stuff, like it brought in people, but it wasn't people that were sticking around for what the main meat of the channel was. So I'd done stuff like what I'm doing in the art book channel before, but I'm going to go, like a little more multimedia and put in like some more images and stuff like that. So I'm not just flipping through a book. So hopefully it's something different from your standard. Can you
please start every episode like Mr. Rogers?
I mean, I'm doing. I have staged like a little set area in my dining room because there's this like little like 5 foot across, 6 foot across alcove. So I kind of staged it so with like anybody who's like has IKEA furniture or knows enough about IKEA furniture just knows the Po Yang chair because like those end up on sale on Craigslist or Facebook, whatever, like all the time. So yeah, I staged the Po Yang chair and I have like a shelf that's like nicely staged and stuff like that. And so this way, when I have the segments that are like just the talking head parts of it, it'll be filmed there. And then like there'll also be the shots of the, like in the book, like looking at it. And then like I'm going to put in some like clips and stuff like that. So, I want to use like, we have in video, like there's so much stuff you can do with it. So I wanted to use like the extent of what can be done with it.
Go flex a little on us, huh?
Yeah, you gotta flex.
Nice. Well, we are just past the hour mark, so it was good to hang out with your brother. In case anyone doesn't know, we are related.
Yeah. Strangely enough, not just
enough.
the having the same last name by coincidence.
Yeah, I thought the Nerdarchist makes us related. No, no, but it was good to catch up with you. We'll have to do this again, and next time you have something going on, let me know. Maybe when you launch the book channel officially, you can have you back on. And the links are all in the pinned comment below, so people can go check it out. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.